Hey guys, welcome back to another one of our welfare series episodes. Today is episode 5, I believe, yeah. And just while we kind of wait for people to join into the chat, I can give a quick recap of what we've done so far. We've done an episode on mindfulness. We've done an episode on kind of looking after your well-being. We've done an episode on just mental health in general, meditation. So we've kind of tried to cover different aspects about mental health and kind of things that you can do and exercises that you can do to kind of increase that, mental resilience and increase your mental skills, your kind of mental health coping skills. That's what all these kind of series are kind of aimed around. They're kind of aimed around you guys just being able to develop those skills with a guided hand and pushing it further. That's kind of the objective of these. And if you do get time to watch one or two, or even just watch back and try and follow along with the exercises, it can be really, really helpful. So just as we were waiting for more and more people to join in, today we're going to be kind of talking about positive steps to well-being. And one of the kind of really important factors in all of this is kind of being able to look back and being able to look forward, being able to plan for that. But also it kind of involves you being able to manage your stress as well, We haven't really talked about stress yet, and it obviously is a very stressful time for a lot of people, during the lockdown, and it can be even more stressful actually after the lockdown, when we're going to be going back out into, the working world and back out into the public realm. There will be a lot of stress and anxiety that's going to go along with that, and that's only natural. And our aim is to kind of get you guys to understand a lot of that, and maybe for some people who might not necessarily understand like why they're feeling stressed about something, or might not even know like what stress really is. A lot of people throw around those phrases like stress and anxiety, but they don't really know what it is. And sometimes it can kind of clear things in your own mind when you see it broken down for you from someone else. So we're just gonna wait for a few more people to kind of pop in and out. And just if you are listening in for the first time, or if you are listening to these like every other day, make sure you are following along with those exercises that we talked about in previous episodes, because obviously no one's gonna check on your homework or whatever, but you yourself will know when you're starting to feel better and when you are starting to feel a bit more content, or if you are feeling more calm, you'll start to feel that. So it's it's a good idea to give yourself that time to apply those skills and to develop on those skills, because right now we're just trying to cover base level content, just to try and get people kind of more familiar with mental health and all the intricacies that are involved with it. Okay, so one of the main questions that a lot of people ask, and you might have asked yourself this as well, when you're feeling really low or when you're trying to help someone, people always ask like, hey, how can I develop mental toughness? What is mental toughness? How come, some people get overwhelmed by certain things, but other people, they don't get phased at all? And then, everyone has a different threshold. And how can I increase that threshold? How can I increase that capacity to kind of maintain my mental toughness? Well, we talked a bit about it on the previous episode, where it was about building happiness, and the fact that happiness has a baseline, that you don't just go from, the highest of the high straight to the lowest of the low. There is a baseline of happiness, and our goal, and the goal of your positive mental health and good mental health, is being able to get near that baseline for as long as possible, as much as possible. So for anyone that's just kind of joining in late again, today what we're talking about is positive steps to well-being, and kind of building on the exercises that we've done in the last few episodes. One of the main questions that a lot of people ask again is that, how can I develop mental toughness? So there's 3 kind of aspects that you need to look after, and you kind of need to be aware of. And a lot of this stuff, like, it's something that you've thought about, but it's no one's ever actually put it in words for you, or no one's actually been able to kind of localize it for you. And it's good that, if you are taking time out to listen to these, that you're able to kind of use your own self as an example for your own development. So the number one thing that I would suggest, that if you do, want to develop your mental toughness, is you need to develop that ability to learn from your mistakes and not hide from them and not run from them. Yeah. So there's key aspect there is that you're learning from the mistakes. It's okay to have, do you make a mistake, something goes wrong, you said the wrong thing, or there's so many times where, you read a message from someone and you read it in a certain way, but they meant to send it in another way. And that's a prime example of, you being able to learn from your mistakes, that, okay, I didn't, interpret it the way they wanted me to interpret it. I'll accept that mistake. And you know what, next time I won't do that. Because by me assuming that they meant it this way, it just created a cascading effect, or just, a compounding effect of negative thoughts. So don't be afraid to admit your mistakes, and don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes, because that's the only way you can increase that mental toughness. Another way to increase your mental toughness, I know for anyone that knows Adam, he loves the word resilience. He loves that word, resilience. And, it's Adam's mantra. It's his way of okay, you know what, I'm going to persevere and I'm going to push through. And in order to do that, you have to stay positive. Always keep in mind that your happiness and your mental health and, the emotions that you're feeling, it's always a curve. And you're not always going to be at the lowest of the low, and you're not always going to be at the highest of the high. So do stay positive in those moments when you are feeling low, that, okay, you know what, it will get better and I will be able to push through this. And if you feel like you can't push through it, there are people there that can help you. So if you ever need to, guide someone to some help, or if you need to get help yourself, contact us at Student Services. Another way that you can develop your mental toughness, and this is really important as well, is that embracing the challenge. Don't assume failure before you've actually attempted it even. There are so many incidences and cases that we see even with our friends or within ourselves and family, that you believe that that person can do it. You're like, oh, you can do that. But they don't believe it in themselves, right? But you from the outside can see that, oh, they can do that. Like, that's not a challenge for them. They can do that. But then why is it so difficult when it happens to us? Like, when it's a challenge put in front of us, we feel like we can't do it, but other people can see that we can do it. So in those moments, try and think like, okay, from the outside perspective, or try and think like, okay, maybe I can challenge this, that I do have support, that I need to be able to do this, but embrace that challenge. Yeah. We're very good to help, we're very quick, and we're very eager to help other people out of their sticky situations or help them through a challenge. But when it comes to us facing a challenge as individuals, we're very quick to be negative, and we're very quick to shut ourselves off and say, oh, I can't do it. Where in actual fact, try and apply that same, positivity towards yourself that you would apply to someone else. So just again, quick recap, the 3 key things that, you should try and work on, even once a week, or, once a day, to, develop mental toughness. Just be aware of them even. You're trying to stay positive, you're learning from your mistakes, and you're embracing the challenge. If you can implement these 3 things into your life, you'll definitely, increase your mental toughness and your resilience. A good way, so I can talk you guys through a quick little exercise that you can do. It's an exercise you can do it once a month, and then you can do it again another month. It's something that you can do, throughout longer periods of time. It's not something that you have to do weekly, or something that you have to do daily. And it's quite simple. It's known as the looking back exercise. And what you're going to do is you're going to choose a time frame to reflect on. And you're going to need a piece of paper, you're going to need a pen, and you're basically going to choose a time period. So either your first year in college, or first year in your job, or your first, month, or at, joining a sport or an activity, whatever the case may be. But you're picking a 1 month period of your life from the past. Okay? And you're going to clearly define that time frame. From A to Z, you're going to define it, that it's from this month to this month, that's the month period. Okay? And what you're going to do is just literally take a bullet point of every thing that you accomplished in that month. Okay? It might seem the most minor, obscure thing, but put it down. If you did the gardening that month, put it down. Okay? If you washed your car by hand that month, put it in that list. Whatever the accomplishment it may be, no matter how big, no matter how small, you want to put that in a list. Okay? And then we can narrow it down even further, is that you can pick one day from that time frame. Okay, so you want to pick one day from that time frame, and you can take down maybe 5 or 6 bullet points on what made that day so special. Okay, so again, just to recap for people that are joining in late, the exercise we're doing is called looking back, and what you're doing is you're picking a 1 month time frame in your life, and you're listing your accomplishments from that time period. Not your best accomplishments, not the most accomplishments, doesn't matter. It can be everything. All the accomplishments that you feel, that you've made in that month. They might seem minor, doesn't matter. Put them in. Then within that month, there must have been one day or something that you can think about that was, a really, really good day. So what you want to do is you want to pick that day and, give 5 or 6 bullet points on why that day was so good, why that day was so special. Okay? And then the most important aspect about all of this is that how have you, you want to take another paragraph and you're going to talk about how you have grown or what lessons you learned during that time frame. Okay? So during that 1 month time frame, you're going to talk about, how you grew or how you feel like now looking back, how you grew, and, what lessons did you learn in that? And if you feel like, oh, I can't think of any lessons, take your time to reflect and then write it down. We're very quick on kind of remembering all the negative stuff that happened to us and very quick to remember all the negative things that, we think. And sometimes it's hard to think about all the positive stuff. But that's why you have to train yourself. And this goes back to kind of increasing that mental toughness and having that positive outlook. So do bear that in mind when you're doing this exercise as well. So you want to just give 3 examples of that. 3 examples, one, how you've grown, maybe 1 or 2 examples of what lessons you learned during the time frame. And then the final 2 parts of this exercise, one, again, this is all bullet points. You don't have to write a long essay, right? So what you're doing is you're writing, a quick little 3-point bullet points on what you're grateful for in that time period, okay? And then another 3 separate points on what challenges you overcame during that time frame. Now, it might seem really, really difficult, and it might seem, oh, I can't think of anything, oh, I'm just not going to do it. Even if you can get 1 bullet point from each of those sections, that's still very good. And that's still something that you can build on and improve on. Because again, it's about kind of increasing that mental toughness, and it's about being able to look back, being able to learn from mistakes, maintaining a positive outlook, and you're building that mental toughness day by day or month by month. And this exercise, you only need to do it once a month, so there's no harm in setting aside 10 minutes a month to do an exercise like that if it's going to increase your mental toughness. And yeah, okay, so there's another a separate exercise that kind of goes hand in hand with this, and obviously the last exercise was looking back, so part 2 is kind of looking forward, and it's it's the same concept, but this time instead of picking a time frame from the past, what you're going to be doing is picking a time frame for yourself in the future. Okay, and what that means basically is that look, right now summertime's coming up, exams are done, all of that's kind of finished. And now you're looking forward, everyone's looking forward to go back into college, going back into work. But what plan do you have? What have you prepared for that moment that you do go back? Are you just going to wing it? Are you just going to hope that, oh, okay, it's all going to be great? And hopefully it is. Hopefully it is all great. But not everything is always as we planned, and not everything is always perfect. So it's good to have, a plan for your physical self. Okay, I'm going to take the bus and I'm going to go here and I'm going to keep my distance and all of that stuff. But what about for your mental health? Do you have a plan for when you go back in September or in a month's time or 2 months' time? Do you have a mental plan for how you're going to, increase your toughness, increase that resilience within yourself? If you do, that's great, and you can still probably follow along with the exercise. But if you don't, try, following the steps. It's very, similar to the last one. All we'll be doing is you're picking a 1 month time frame. So if it helps, just pick, September to October, or November, December, whatever you want to pick. Just pick that 1 month time frame, and take down a list of 10 to 12 kind of bullet points of what you want to achieve during that time frame. So in that 1 month period, what do you want to achieve? And it doesn't have to be sentences, just quick little bullet points. I want to go jogging once, or something like I want to go to the gym once. Whatever the achievement may be, just put that in, okay? And then separate paragraph, what we're going to talk about is what you're looking forward to the most during that time frame, okay? So a quick little line about what I'm looking forward to most in that time frame, and try and give 3 examples of the things that you're looking forward to the most, okay? In addition to that, also, we're going to talk about, what relationships during that time frame do you want to develop? So maybe you're not as close with your classmates as you want to be. Maybe you're, want to get more involved in a society. Do that. What if you want to get more involved in sports? All those kind of things. Have a plan for, what categories and which areas that you want to develop on. And, 2, 3 bullet points. That's all you have to do. Okay. If you were listening in on the conversation that we had on Monday, a major factor in kind of your own happiness is you helping other people. So that kind of ties in here. So when you are planning for, the return or whatever 1 month period that you've picked, just try and give 3 or 4 bullet points on what you can do to help others during the time frame. Okay? So the time frame that you've picked, just 2, 3 bullet points on what you can do to help others. It can be simple stuff. It can be, helping out with charities, whatever the case may be. Just write it down for yourself. Okay? And the last and most important part of the exercise is that try and write down 3 or 4 bullet points on how, how ideally, your life will be different at the end of the time frame. Do you get me? So we're planning for the time frame, and you're planning to have certain goals and achievements done throughout the time frame. But what aspects or what part of your life do you want to feel has grown by the end of the time frame? Because it's got to have a goal. You're not just doing these things for the sake of doing them. You're doing these exercises and you're setting these targets for yourself for a specific reason. And that is up to yourself to decide why you want to do these things. I realize I've rambled a little bit and there's a few people that are just joining in. So I'll give you a quick little recap. What we're talking about today is kind of positive steps to well-being and how you can kind of develop mental toughness. And the 3 key areas that we talked about was learning from your mistakes, staying positive, and embracing the challenge. Yeah. And how we kind of develop 2 tasks and 2 exercises that you can do to develop these as well. So the first task that we talked about was looking back. And essentially you're looking back at a 1 month period in your life and you're, reflecting on it. You're writing down, making bullet points on your achievements in that time frame, no matter how small they are, what you're grateful for in that time frame, what challenges that you overcame during that time frame, how you feel like you grew in that time frame. So that's all of the reflective looking back. Okay. Now for the looking forward, which is task 2, you're basically, it's the reverse of it basically. So you want to be able to write down, okay, I want to achieve these certain things in this 1 month time frame. I want to be able to, build on these relationships in that 1 month time frame. These are the things I'm looking forward to in that time frame, and these are the ways I can help people in that time frame. So it's about kind of getting yourself not just mentally ready, but emotionally ready for whichever 1 month time frame that you have picked. So prime time example is picking the September 1 month time period. So throughout September, have your plan for how you want to be and how you want to grow in that time frame. Okay. We talked a bit about what's called building happiness, and kind of we talked a bit about anxiety last week as well. I feel like one of the major topics as well that we need to kind of quickly run through is stress. This is a really stressful time for a lot of people, and the stress of not knowing when we're exactly going back, the stress of not knowing how things are going to be when the new normal, what that's going to be like. So I'm just going to kind of run through a bit about what stress is and a few tips, and then Henrik, I see a request there. I will wrap this up in the next 5 minutes and then I'll bring you in. So just to kind of quickly run through some stress management and stress tips that you guys can incorporate into your own life. Keep in mind though, stress is not a bad thing. We need stress in our lives. Like stress, has a hormonal impact on your body, And stress can actually make you very, very kind of productive. You need that, but obviously too much of it can actually hamper your ability to perform. So stress kind of motivates us to work towards solving our problems, So reframe your thoughts to view stress as an acceptable emotion rather than, oh my God, I'm stressed and I'm shutting down. No, it's stress is a tool, and it's been found to reduce many of the negative symptoms associated with with just not being productive enough. You need a bit of stress to keep you productive and to keep those levels of kind of engagement going. But if you're not, if you're too stressed and if you're overstressed, then obviously it's going to have a dampening effect on your ability. A great way to kind of manage your stress is to talk about your problems. And the key here is that even if they won't be solved, if you think that your problem won't be solved by talking to someone, and you think, oh, I'm not going to talk to them because they can't solve it, that doesn't matter. We're not, like, sometimes just lending an ear or listening to someone's problem or just kind of unloading that burden, not passing the burden to someone else, but just, being able to talk about it will feel like a burden lifted off you. Talking about your stressors, even if you don't solve them, releases the hormones in your body that reduces the effects of stress. So time that you spend talking to your friends and your loved ones, it's valuable because it might not feel like your problem's going away, but the levels of stress you feel will come down. Thirdly, prioritizing your responsibilities. So if you really want to manage your stress, you have to manage your responsibilities. So focus on completing your quick tasks first. Having too many to-do lists and too many things on your to-do list can be really stressful, because the fact that you even have a stress list a to-do list will make you more stressed if you're not doing it. So what you want to do is prioritize your responsibilities and clear away the quick little tasks that you need to do, and then you're more focused on the larger responsibilities. But if you're constantly just making lists of tasks that you have to do, then as the list builds, the level of stress will build, and then the workload is piling up. So try and limit that and prioritize your responsibilities accordingly. The fourth tip we've got here is, so you focus on the basics, right? And stress, a bit like anxiety as well, it starts a harmful cycle. And what happens is that you start neglecting your basic needs. What happens with a lot of us is that when we are stressed or have a lot of anxiety, which leads to depression, a lot of people, they stop eating. Like they just they won't eat and they won't keep a healthy schedule. You start to push aside your physical health completely, and that's not something you should be doing. That's something that is actually really good for you to do while you're in those stressful periods, because it will help lift you out of it. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So people who are over involved in one's aspect of their own life, they often struggle to deal with the stress. What that basically means is that you're not spreading yourself too thin, and it comes back to the prioritizing your responsibilities. You're not responsible for what everyone else is doing. You're not responsible for how everyone else is doing. If you can't look after yourself first, how are you supposed to look after anyone else, and how are you supposed to help? They talk to you, it's going to feel like the best thing ever when you get onto an airplane and they tell you all about the safety procedures, but they tell you that, put your own mask on first before you put someone else's. And it's the same thing here. Prioritize your own responsibilities first, look after your own things that you need to do first before you start taking on other people's kind of burdens and their stress. And how you do that is you set aside time for yourself. Personal time usually gets moved to the bottom of the list when you're looking after, like when you're really stressed. You get rid of your own personal time. You stop worrying about your own physical health, and you start basically making yourself suffer even more, and it just increases that cycle. So when personal time is neglected, everything tends to suffer. So do set aside time for yourself to relax and have fun without interruptions. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to go have fun for 5 minutes and then I'm back to the next 5 hours of doing my work. No, give yourself time to decompress and essentially de-stress without interruptions. And obviously, finally, the key component in all of this is kind of try and keep things in perspective. In the heat of the moment, like when you're really, really stressed, or like when you're really, really angry, all you can see is red. The little problems can seem a lot bigger than they are. Okay, and it's really important to take that step back and think about how important your stressors are, and in a broader context. What something that might be triggering your stress, you know, may seem like an ant for someone else, and that's fine because everyone has their own, you know, everyone has their own depth that they can handle. But how many times have you had that in your life where you've had a really stressful day and you feel like, oh my God, and like this is the end of the world. But then in a week's time, you look back and you think, why was I even worried? You know, why was I even stressing about over that? Why was I just kind of letting that overtake my life? Because what you want to do is, do these things that are bothering you now, will they matter in a week? Will they matter in a year? You know? And writing about your stressors really gives you a better health perspective. So try and keep a journal. If you haven't already, just try and follow along with some of the exercises that we talked about in today's episode and in the previous episodes. But the key is that there's steps to well-being, and that it's not a one-night fix, and it's not a, you know, a magic pill, and it's not a, you know, a €100 a session for an hour therapy session for 10 years. No, it's got to come from you taking the positive steps, and then you'll start to see results. So I think everyone's probably tired of hearing me speak all the time. I'm going to bring in our guest. Let me just see where he's at now. Henrik is there. Henrik, hold on. Go live with Henrik. Here we go.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, bro? How are you?
I'm good. I'm just in the mountains making my way to somewhere I can sit down, but I'll still be there in 10 minutes. But I'm ready to talk now.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, so I was actually, I messaged you earlier today as well because I saw you were traveling between like two different countries, and I thought, oh my God,
Um,
is he even gonna have Wi-Fi to come online?
no, I'm in
Um,
Norway, but I'm traveling across. I've been driving for 6 hours across Norway,
wow. Okay,
so I'm
fair.
still in the same place.
Yeah, yeah. It looks real sunny and nice there too, so that's good.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So to give some people a background, actually, and the fact that you shaved your beard now, so people are gonna recognize you even less.
Yeah, true.
So for anyone that's not familiar with who Henrik is, just a quick little, you know, background. So Henrik was part of the Students' Union last year. He was on the student life team, one of the sports and clubs officers. And this year, Henrik, you were also the president of the Sustainability Society,
Yeah,
and also the president of the Yoga Society, and
and the Mountaineering
the
Society.
Mountaineering Society. Yeah. So you know, he's Henrik obviously likes to be very involved and very active, and you know, you like that that you can go out there and kind of have the spiritual side, be mindful, and you have the whole mind, body, and soul kind of concept that's really important to you. So I was wondering if you want to kind of talk to us a bit about what got you first into, you know, practicing yoga and setting up the society, and if you want to talk to us about the Sustainability Society too.
Okay, so the whole like history of me going into yoga wasn't is it's not a very miraculous story.
Hmm.
I think when I was about 16 or 17, I realized that I do not know what the hell is going on with anything. Like, uh, not like it wasn't a search of meaning, like, but it was just like I don't have any framework. I don't have any. Yeah, I was just no kind of realizing that I do not know why I'm doing the stuff I'm doing with my life.
You
Like,
felt a bit
just in terms
lost,
of
kind of.
regular stuff, not lost at all, but like going to school, searching for a career,
Yeah.
looking for a relationship. I was just realizing that like a pretty big confusion about whether these kind of like wishes or wants were coming from myself
Mm-hmm.
or if I was just following some kind of checklist imposed on me by society.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And that's like a hard thing to kind of like a certain uh, what is actually your emotions, like your intrinsic, inherent emotional responses and wishes, and what are just actions and stuff you kind of do compulsively because you're expected to do them. And I think I realized that like I cannot make that distinction within myself. And then I got into yoga. I met some of my first teachers, and moving to Ireland, I found a Buddhist Vajrayana master, like a Buddhist teacher. Became a student of his, Panchanatul Rinpoche. I've been studying with him for 4 years. And I was asked to take over leadership of Yogasak, and I did. And when I came back for my third year, we recently had started up a sustainability society. So I took the lead on that as well, I guess. kind of simple.
Yeah. And so do you want to, like, maybe for a lot of people, like, you know, obviously they hear about it and they might not necessarily know a lot about what sustainability involves. They think that, oh,
Mm,
okay, I'm just not going to eat this thing. But
mm,
sustainability, from our understanding, it kind of incorporates everything as part of, like, you know, from the packaging to from how the food is grown, from what you give to the food, that, like, it's all
yeah,
encompassing. It's not just one aspect of that chain. It's
yeah,
everything, right?
yeah. So, like for me, we're trying to make, we're trying to increase sustainability and create environmental change by trying to change how we buy stuff, trying to change our buying habits, traveling habits, eating habits. But I think in order to ensure real sustainability, we have to change the human perspective on themselves.
Mm.
I think the current like world view that most people have and the way we're educated is all based around an idea of exploitation and utility. So we think of everything around us in terms of how can I use this thing.
It's very consumer based. It's like, I want to consume, 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 and take what's for me, kind of thing.
Yeah, but the consumerism also seeps into the way we look at other people and relationships and stuff.
Mm.
Like when we look at other people, we constantly think like, what do I get out of this?
Yeah.
We have kind of businessified and quantified even like love and affection.
Yeah.
Uh, like think about the way we learn about other countries in school, for example. Like we learn about like what do they produce, what's their GDP. It's all based on an idea of exploitation. And when we're talking about this country has like a bright future,
Mm.
we're talking about it purely in terms of money and production. And I think this kind of like consumerist paradigm or perspective has seeped into humans as well. So we think about ourselves as a resource, as a product that we need to kind of exploit and use correctly in order to achieve success.
Yeah, and I think along the
So
way in that, you kind of end up losing not only your perspective on life in general, but your perspective on who you are. I think a lot of people get caught in that the race of, okay, get to college, get a job, get married, have the kid, work enough that I can get retired, and then what? Like, are you going to live your life
yeah,
when you're like 60?
yeah,
No, that's, you know, life is for living, but it's also for living responsible and, you know, being responsible for to yourself, but also to your community.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right. And I think the way we're treating the world now, the way we're treating animals, what we're doing to the environment,
Mm.
uh, I think it doesn't have anything to do with bad will or malintent from people. I think it's all about people being unconscious of how our habits, like the way we're, like especially in the Western world, used to living, how unsustainable it is in the long
Mm.
term. Uh,
Right,
yeah,
and you're a vegetarian, or are you vegan, or
vegan,
what's you're vegan?
completely vegan.
Okay.
Yeah,
And were you always, or did you take that step to kind of?
I uh, I began as a vegetarian, and
Mm,
then I watched a movie called Earthlings for the second time.
okay.
And after second time watching Earthlings, I've never had a single piece of meat after.
Okay.
It's a very strong movie.
Mm. And what would you say was, like, you know, obviously you have to have strong convictions to be able to follow through with something like that, and to be
Yeah,
able to kind of stick to it. So how do you keep that mental toughness? How do you keep that kind of drive?
I think on my part, like I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, a
Hmm.
Vajrayana Buddhist, and like the very, very, very central practice and tenet in Vajrayana Buddhism
Hmm.
is compassion
Hmm.
or karuna. So like I daily do meditations on compassion, where we meditate on kind of solidarity with other living beings. That like even though me and you are different, and even though I'm different in terms of intelligence to say a dog, our capacity to feel pain and our ability to feel both pain and happiness are still there, and they're similar. Like they suffer, like I suffer. Uh, and I think that gives me momentum to kind of constantly try to, if not try to create happiness, at least avoid hurting.
Yeah.
And I think like everybody shouldn't start, like you should start sustainability and well-being and all of those things not from a place of
Anger.
doing good, but from a place of hurting less,
Mm.
like doing less damage,
Okay.
both
That's an
to
interesting,
yourselves
yeah.
and to your external.
Yeah, that is a yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I never thought of it that way, that you're not trying to just do good, but you're actually trying to limit harm.
Yeah,
And, you know, Yeah, I've never actually heard it put that way, and that's quite, you know, it's quite something. It just kind of makes you think, like, there's so many things that we could be doing, and it's just hard to keep that mental toughness. Like, I mean, I did Ramadan for a whole month, and I was able to do it for a month because I knew it was a month. Do you get me? It was kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, I can fast for a month, like that's fine. But like to be able to do it for a whole year, yeah, it would definitely like, or your whole lifetime, it would
Mm.
definitely need a lot more kind of drive. And you
Yeah, I
mentioned
think
there that you do meditation in the mornings.
yeah.
So I was gonna bring that up later on, but actually, you have your own Instagram channel where you actually, do you want to talk about that? Where you actually have videos posted and you do a lot of guided live streams as well.
Yeah, I do some guided live streams on Instagram. Some of my stuff is up on YouTube, but most of the work I do is, of course, like physically.
Mm.
I have private students, like one-on-one students that I am currently trying to certify to become yoga teachers
Mhm.
and meditation instructors. So we're in the process of doing that right now. Some of those people actually went to DBS and we met through YogaSuck,
Nice.
and they're now very close to becoming certified meditation and yoga teachers, which is very cool.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I regularly hold workshops and retreats, usually all over Europe. But right now, I'm of course like confined to Norway.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the reason I'm up here in the mountains today. Is I just went to look at a retreat venue.
Yeah. And actually, yeah. So, because obviously we've been keeping in touch, but for those of you who don't know, so you traveled from Dublin back to Norway, and they asked you to stay isolated for 14 days, right?
10 days.
10 days, sorry.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? How did you manage that? And like, what was your kind of outlook going into it, and then outlook, like, your reflection coming out of it?
For me, it was kind of okay because uh, it's very, very rarely in like modern living that we get a chance to actually have 10 days in a row where we don't have to do anything.
Hmm.
And I was kind of treating it as a reflection around who am I without all my roles and all the stuff I like quote unquote have to do.
Hmm.
Because like being like saying going to school, you're playing a role. Meeting your friends, you're playing a role. Hanging out with family, you're playing a role. So it was a very interesting experience in reflection and patience to try to see what was kind of naturally emerging from me internally
Hmm.
when I didn't have any of those roles to fulfill. And it led to a lot of creative work for my part. So a lot of like new teaching material, meditation material, and retreat plans actually emerged from me being in quarantine, which was a good thing. But I think it can also be like a very mentally damaging experience for people. Like it all depends on what your perspective is going into it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like how well you've obviously trained your own mental health, but also how far you're willing to push that boundary within yourself.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, like you also run a lot of Q&As on your Insta feed as well, and
yeah,
people can drop by and ask you questions about a whole variety of topics that you like to kind of cover.
yeah.
What's been the most interesting topic that you found that people really kind of engage with?
I think the question of how people define meditation is
Mm.
very, very, very interesting because people have so many varying experiences in it, um, which is curious because I'm thinking a little bit like, are we talking about the same thing here, or are like, is the experience different, but the experience is identical, but the method is different?
Mm.
So that was like a really, really long, interesting discussion that led to with a lot of my students,
Right.
which was very cool.
And what would you say is your definition or your kind of uh, belief about meditation?
I think if we're talking about, because meditation is both a practice and a state, right? So when you're saying that you're practicing meditation, what you're trying to do is to get into a meditative state, right? Like in yogic terminology, we call that state samadhi, which means togetherness or union. So to me, like how I define the meditative state is a state of uncategorized or undefined existence. And that sounds a little bit new agey,
Mm.
but we're regularly living in a defined existence, right? Because like uh, by defined existence, I mean that like we have a lot of identities going on in our minds, and one like we are, say,
It's
a
like
gender.
the who we want to be, what society wants us to be, and what your family wants you to be, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So you're playing like hundreds of identities in a day, right? You're looking at yourself both as a human and you're measuring your success. Say,
Yeah.
how masculine am I, right? You identify with your gender.
Mm.
How successful am I, right? And that's identification with your work. How good of a friend am I? That's identification with your social circle. And we have all of these identifications going on, right? And to me, the meditative state or samadhi is a state where you are simply being, period. Like you're not being anything, you're just being, and you're experiencing what being is when it's not categorized by identity. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, in Sanskrit, we say that like yoga occurs or meditation occurs when you have withdrawn all the projections of the mind.
Okay. And like again, like something like that is not easy to just get on the first day. Like you've got to build yourself up, and you got to be able to kind of train yourself, and learn the foundations to be able to get to that level. And
Yeah.
so do you have like what kind of tips and advice would you have for students who are looking to kind of get into that world, who necessarily have an interest but they don't know how to get started? They don't know how to get started with yoga, and they don't know how to get started with meditation. And because from an outside perspective, like when I initially started and I Googled it, there was millions, and I mean millions of different areas, and it just becomes overwhelming. So, for a student who's, listening to this now or listens to it later, what would you say is a good way to just kind of start?
Ahimsa. We always start with ahimsa, which means non-violence. So ahimsa is the basic practice of both Buddhism and yoga. It's where you always begin. And that just means live life without doing any harm. And that means not doing harm to yourself, but also not doing harm to others, right? And so you're trying to live every day, just like one moment at a time, without hurting other people with the way you speak or the way you live, right? And that's like the reason I'm a vegan, because I don't want to hurt any other beings with my life. But like more importantly, or like at least as important, is try to live your life without doing any harm to yourself. And I think we tend to think about self-harm as like a physical thing, kind of like damaging ourselves physically. But the way we eat can be harmful to ourselves. The way we sleep can be violence towards ourselves. What we watch on TV can be violence towards ourselves. So I think the first step is looking at every day and kind of like taking a moment to reflect, both in the morning and in the evening, and just like reflecting on your day. Did I cause any unnecessary harm to other people, other beings? And did I cause unnecessary harm to myself?
Yeah, and it's good to
treat yourself as somebody you don't want to hurt or harm. Like treat yourself as somebody you respect.
Yeah, and you kind of pointed out there as well that it's not just the physical aspect; it's so much more, and it includes the psychological aspect. You don't know what you might say to someone will affect them, but internally, like you don't know how negative your thoughts can kind of build up, and how you can start catastrophizing those thoughts, and eventually your mental health will start impacting your physical health, and they go hand in hand. You need to have kind of both. So let's say a student was to follow you on Instagram after listening to this, and we're going to post up a link to your page on the story as well. They can just drop you a message and join on the Q&As whenever they feel like. What would you say for students that necessarily they don't want to go out into the public eye and start doing yoga? They just want to practice some basic moves just at home.
You mean in terms of physical yoga?
Yeah.
Physical yoga. That's not a very hard one. Make sure the spine bends forward, backwards, and twists. That's the basics.
Well, you say that, but I remember when me and you were doing the video, I tried some of those things, man. It was tough, but I did eventually get it right, though. I did get it right, and we will be. I'm still working on editing those into like a proper, video. So we will be releasing them soon as well. But do you have any other kind of last minute things that you would like to, as a message to students, or just in general?
I'd say limit your time on social media, because it's time spent in a complete waste most of the time. And think about what you put into your body, both physically and mentally, because we tend to be aware of it physically, right? We don't want to eat junk food, but also think about what you feed your mind. If you look at your mind, like the mind is similar to the body, and the mind will behave and function based on what it's fed. So if you're spending 3 hours every night watching porn or some show you're really not enjoying on Netflix, if you're kind of like constantly just filling your mind with information, junk kind of, that's a very simple step people can take. Limit mental junk food, limit noise, allow some space every day for silence. Maybe only going for a walk for 20 minutes, but just allow at least 20 minutes every day when you're not having any inputs, because that constant input leads to you constantly repressing the stuff you really need to process and work through, because you're always feeding stuff in instead of letting stuff go.
Yeah.
So that's like a very
and I'm really glad you brought that up, because myself and Adam went to the mental health conference for of all of Ireland, and this was back in November. And one of the keynote speakers, what he highlighted was that the generations now, like, I mean, I'm like 30 now, but basically, like when I was growing up, right, there was like, you know, in secondary school, primary school, there was a time period where after school and before you got home, there was that off period. There was that period where you weren't on your phone, because most people didn't have phones. You weren't on your phone, and you weren't, you know, on social media, and you weren't doing anything. You were literally just switched off from the world, and you were able to kind of be in your own thoughts, you know. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You need to be able to have that period of time where it's just you with your thoughts. Nowadays, it's more like when I'm driving to work and the drive back from work. That time period is where I can switch off from the world and just kind of let the day's thoughts kind of digest and let them go. I think what happens nowadays is that you're constantly in communication with people, or you're constantly kind of being stimulated either mentally and visually. You're watching something, you're listening to something. You never have that off period until your head hits the pillow, and then you can't sleep, because now all of day's thoughts are coming together at one time. So you need to be able to kind of separate, give yourself that, you know, 1 hour a day where it's, you know, just yourself.
Totally.
Great. So thanks so much, Henrik, for joining in. I have to ask though, so where's Runar? Everyone knows you guys as a duo. Like, I can't believe you're there and Runar's not there.
I know. I'm gonna see him in 2 weeks. He's in Bergen, so he's on the other side of the country.
Oh, cool. That's nice. Yeah, well, give him our best, and hope you're staying safe too. And
thank you, man. You too.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
No worries. Anytime, man.
I'll post on the story now a link to your page, and yeah, guys, go give him a follow, and you know, keep in touch. All right, bro.
Cool.
Take care. Peace.
Thank you, man. Bye.
Bye.